people, first of all, you have to think that when I say I'm a Hindu, doesn't mean I'm anti something, okay? Or even if I say
that's an important distinction, right?
even if I say I'm pro-Hindu, doesn't make me anti-Hindu. Or if I'm a pro-life, that doesn't make me anti-life. To put it in the U.S. perspective here. So we have to keep that in mind. And again, I will go back to our education system, the way we have been taught. The moment we talk about Hinduism, that is seen as attacking somebody else, because that was the whole premise of not teaching us about our own culture, because Mahasabha will come, all right? Hindu Mahasabha will come, or the RSS will become stronger. So we never had those kind of reconciliation that we talk about. I mean, I talked to some people in our group about.
You still see that though, right? I mean, you still see that in like political conversation, even in mainstream political conversations. I remember it was a central theme of the 2014 elections that if Modi wins, India will end as a nation. But lo and behold, to the great surprise of everybody on the planet, India is still around. There's a great conversation. I mean, if you follow, no, in India particularly, and he's talking about, the Hindu Mahasabha will come, that danger. That narrative, it hasn't gone away.
No, it hasn't. I mean, when I talk to folks in our group, from, let's say, I have a big group of JNU people that I interact with.
Wow, you're in the belly of the beast, aren't you?
And, it's like, don't talk about it, don't create disharmony. For example, to talk about the Goa Inquisition. Let's not talk about it. But that doesn't mean when I talk about these things, that doesn't mean I have any anti-feeling and I have any kind of revenge feeling towards anybody. But we need to talk. I mean, it's sometimes it comes like, my wife, I have mentioned that is Polish origin, right? So there are certain things that in her family is never talked about. The German occupation of Gdansk. Gdansk. The city of Gdansk. Okay. My wife's grandfather was, became part, because he was a teacher, he became part of the German, whatever, bureaucracy or whatever, and he did a lot of things without his will, and he never wanted to talk about it. But that's a different issue. But here, there's something that is part of history. We need to at least know, and we shouldn't be afraid about it. We should have the confidence that people will not misuse this kind of information. And the more we hide it, the more we run into that kind of problem that will probably bring Mahasabha one day. I hope it answers.
No, it does. And Raji, I want to ask you as well, when we're talking about increasing the assertiveness, stop shying away from being who you are, because for so long you were talking about that we've been taught about how horrible we are and yet there's nothing good about us, but there are, there's parts of the Hindu population that are re-educating themselves, reigniting the sort of light, so to say, within themselves. And what would be your recommendation in that way to say that, okay, this is how we can now, in this day and age, in this time, in American society, continue to assert ourselves better?
Tough question. So what comes to mind is a statement from Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji. So he said, what is the goal of life for a Hindu? The goal of life is to dispel that avidya from your mind about your true nature and acquire vidya. So the vidya will dispel that avidya about your true nature. That is an unapologetic statement of who you are as a Hindu on a personal journey in this lifetime and across lifetimes, knowing your dharma, trying to reduce your karma, and trying to accomplish what the goal of life is. Dispel the fact, who are you? You're part of Brahman. So this is our philosophy. It's an unapologetic statement that should not stand in contradictory terms with Abrahamic philosophies. In my conversations, Abrahamics, for example, with the Muslims, I had a long conversation with one of the preachers, and then he said there is an instance in the Quran that after the Muslim preachers have exhausted all the ways of trying to make you to convert, if everything has failed, then they're required to say, to you yours, and to me mine, and to me mine. I shall not worship that which is yours, and you shall not worship that which is mine. And we go our ways. Of course, some people later on say that is a call to arms, because that is, but the point is, in a contemporary world today, that's a place where we can find dialogue. We can say, you have a precedence. You have precedence, it's not only assimilate or destroy. You have a precedence here where you can go and be with your way or your journey. Your journey is that you obey Muhammad's law, and that will give you that submission will give you perhaps the heaven, Jannah that you seek. But in my systems, this is who I am. Every action of mine is defined by this. So to answer your question, there's no apology about who I am. There's no apology about my philosophy. If every Hindu can articulate, a Hindu word is used to
understand, right?
Yes, yes. So articulation implies understanding first, and understanding. Understanding is a very big word. Understanding means I know Brahman. It means I know Brahman. No, that's a very big word. But the point is that at least we know, like Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji said, what is your goal? The goal of life for them is to obey a divine dictated law. That will give them their heaven. For us, the goal in life is this. This is what we do. So this is unapologetic. I don't think I had to apologize to anybody or be afraid it's going to cause a resurgence of RSS. Doesn't mean that because I assert my Hindu identity. Assertion is a very strong negative connotation too. But just because I articulate to you what my worldview is, it should not be seen as something that is against a Christian worldview. Why are we put through the requirement, through fire literally, to assert our identity? And the same thing is not said when somebody proudly comes and says, I'm a Christian. Wait a minute, does it mean that if I don't believe that the only way to the Father is through the Son, I'm condemned for eternal damnation in fire? Really? Why doesn't somebody ask them that? Why wouldn't somebody say the same thing to a Muslim? But you are held to account. I think that is simply hypocrisy. Utter hypocrisy born out of internalizing ignorances, prejudices, and Hindu phobia. Call it out. I'd say just call it out and just say this is who I am. I don't have to apologize to anybody.
I think that's wonderful. That's a perfect place to end our panel discussion today as well. Thank you again. Please hand for the panelists today. Yeah, we could take a couple of questions. Is there any written questions that we could possibly grab? Oh, Ramji, could you just hand them to us? I think there's one there too.
I'll get it.
Okay, this one is from Mukul Dave, and it's for Raj Vedamji. The question is it plain fascinating to know about science and tech advancements in ancient India, and have you seen these being integrated or furthered in current research in any way? Sure. Is it fascinating to know about science and tech advancements in ancient India, and have you seen these being integrated or furthered in current research today?
I mean, it is fascinating.
Okay.
Oh, it is fascinating. Oh, yeah.
Indeed. So there is the one would dispute many of the assertions made over here, depending on who you talk to. Maybe the contemporary Indologists, I don't mean in a negative word, sir.
I don't consider myself.
So they would dispute. The assertion is that Indian sciences, mathematics, astronomy, everything came from outside India, through the Greek contact, through the Roman contact, through the Babylonian contact, and these kinds of things. So that would be contested. It's a few people who are, like for example myself, trying to see what is the real is again a strange word to use here, the history of science and technology, where did math come from, roots of mathematics. Here we are learning new things. To me, yes, when I see the advances in India today, it is an assertion of some of these things, but it is purely an imbibing of what they think is European scholarship. To them, every mathematics came when Newton suddenly got calculus out of nowhere. And that calculus is enabling us to solve differential equations, go to the moon, go to Jupiter and back. Or they try to see George Boole's effects with Boolean algebra as having resulted in your cell phone and other such things. But each of these things can be traced back to great antiquity, and they can show how these European researchers got their inspiration from Indic works. In tomorrow's talk, I will try to address some of that, maybe not in great detail.
Speaker, would you be able to? I think I can come across loud and clear. Question for the panel. There seems to be a constant thread across all their views, and that goes back to one thing, one fundamental issue, which I see is a major flaw with all of this, is that the curriculum in India, which has shielded all of these accomplishments that all of you have read about and have understood through your own efforts, is completely ignorant. Curriculum keeps this away from the kids. If you're not teaching the next generation, they'll face the same fate that we face. So are there any efforts that are being made to change that curriculum? Because I know about Alauddin Khilji. I didn't have to know about it.
So, can I take this one too? Okay,
By the way, he's a professor of transportation.
Okay. Transportation. So, to address that question, yes, there are a lot of people today in India who are aware of the need for change. There are people who are trying to study how change can take place in the textbooks, but you know how polarized the situation is. If the government were to go and try to change anything with regard to Indic studies and Indic accomplishments, the sectarian bias, supposed sectarian bias charges are made, and they are accused of that. So everybody's very, very scared of doing anything at all. In India, when you talk about education, we have to understand two things. One is, education is a state level subject. However, the central government also has a lot of central schools. So the NCERT develops a curriculum for many of these people. NCERT is headed by certain people with certain ideologies, and certain things come because of that consequence over there. When states make their textbooks, they're not beholden to NCERT. However, they can use NCERT as a reference material. They can freely use its contents, but they can modify it for state history, state modifications, and so on. What we have found in our experience is that some states are willing to entertain where have the changes to be made. But even they don't have the expertise. If I come and say any assertion, for example, Aryan invasion theory on the basis of genetics, they don't have the expertise to evaluate my statement and how to take it. So they'll be worried because they had to go back to NCERT scholars and ask them, does this work or does this not work? In NCERT, you know what that body is over there. So that said, we know the challenges in bringing about change in textbooks. There are a lot of groups, a lot of people who are trying to do that. In the US also, we know there are groups, the California group who is working on textbook changes and so on. So there are groups both here as well as in India who are trying to change it. So they are aware. The problem perhaps will be lessened if the administration in the center comes and asserts that we have to do the right thing. But the problem is so complex that where are the experts to do it? If they want an EMIC expert to come and say something, who is credentializing him? When somebody from Harvard University pedigree comes and Witzel comes and says something, who is going against his word? Are you going to take Sanskrit College Mysore professor against this person's? So this is the issue. So where is the scholarship existing in India to take, because they're conditioned into thinking only credentialed knowledge is valid knowledge. Whereas we are inheritors of a system that looked at pramana in a huge way, not only by perception and inference of Samkhya and other such things, but by a whole lot of other things we were conditioned to think of knowledge. But that way of thinking is gone. Maybe it is an exclusive domain of certain philosophers or philosophical schools. But nobody in the education department has internalized this way of knowledge generation. So they're looking for credential knowledge. Credential knowledge comes from people who are like Professor Doniger, Professor Witzel, who are graduating their PhDs in a certain way of thinking. And they are the ones who are producing the knowledge. Unfortunate.
So
That's how it is. So I'm sure you can.
I'm not an expert as you are very so closely, but I know that from a diaspora perspective, Rajiv Malhotra, for example, he has worked with various departments, psychology departments. So because psychology department is all Western psychology. trying to get them to look at Indian materials, Indian psychological material. And because he was willing to put in money, partially fund, then bring in Western scholars who are sympathetic to him. So this is one tactic he worked on. See, you found, because if you ask for Indian scholars, they all say, no, it's all inferior. Such a kind of, inferiority. What do? You take white scholars, American scholars from here. And then they say, oh, yes, we want them. And when they start saying, oh, this is important, this, that, unfortunately, this is the way, you have to proceed right now. Find people who are sympathetic.
One more question.
So, this is a little bit of a remark. There's something called KTPI, Knowledge, Traditions and Practices of India.
Yes.
It was a curriculum developed for the 11th and 12th grade under the previous government, not under Modi government. In 2012 it went live for CBSE. So it is something that students could take as an option in the 11th and 12th. The curriculum, if you look at it, it's pretty good for a first this thing. It is quite comprehensive, it is really detailed. The problem that happened, and this was again I'm emphasizing this was under the previous government, under the previous Minister of Education, Kapil Kapoor, someone mentioned, he was a big part of it, Michel Danino was another big part of it, and others. So the problem is that they did not think through the implementation. So if I have this in 11th and 12th, which college is going to give me admission? Where do I get the admission to? Etc., etc. That kind of a thing happening. Okay, now who are the teachers who are going to teach this course? So the schools that initially adopted that, and initially there was a large number of schools who was asking about the education. So there were a large number of schools that did adopt, but they had to drop it within a year or two because none of the teachers said, yes, I can teach it, because no one had, as you said, no one had the domain. So the CBSE did not have, okay, we will go to teachers, teacher education to be able to teach this. So Chinmay Vishwavidyapith, which has come into existence just 1.5 years of existence, it's a university, a de novo university. We said that, okay, this is our core function. This is a so we said, okay, we will teach this. So we went to CBSE and said, we will get experts from among us who can teach each aspect, because those KTPI is a vast curriculum. It goes from chemistry to everything, from chemistry to architecture to everything about Indian knowledge, music, dance, everything. So we said, okay, we will stream it in 3 lines: science, arts, and other miscellaneous, and we will teach that. CBSE says we do not have a mechanism of being able to disperse teaching unless schools have already adopted. The schools are saying we cannot adopt because there are no teachers. So in this kind of a circle, we stepped in saying we are not going to wait on the government CBSE to do it. We are not going to wait on this. We are going to take like-minded schools. So Chinmay Vidyalayas, Bharati Vidya Bhavans, Amritanand Vidyalayas, and ask their teachers to come and educate themselves and offer it. So this effort has started in a very small way to bring that into, but in fact the present government is really almost negating and going backwards in, for what reason, what secularism they are under, I have no idea, but they are really not doing the kind of stuff that they could, both at the 11th and 12th level, but they are now beginning to say that we have to do something from the kindergarten onwards. So just a short this thing, and it does need to be promoted. The textbooks are available for download for anybody who would like to. Under CBSE, if you go, you can download those textbooks and look at the content yourself, or else I can give the website.
Thank you. I think we have one last question, and then I think we could call it a day on that. So here's a question. There's no name here, but there's a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and take one. Oh, okay. I'm going to try and take one if that's all right. One of the questions is, Hindutva is different from Hinduism? How, why, and is it more of a political identity than a cultural identity? Anyone wants to take that?
I can attempt. I don't see difference between Hinduism and Hindutva, because look at the Purushartha. You know, Artha, Dharma, Kama, and Moksha. Okay, and in that encapsulates politics. So politics is part of Purushartha. So is money making. Okay? So is aesthetics, physical pleasures. You know, so there is nothing in Hinduism that debars you from doing politics. And politics is a very important part. Organizing is very important. So I personally don't see any difference. The people who want to make this distinction are those who are extremely politically motivated, and they do not want the cause of the Hindus to be forward. That's my personal view.
Perfect. I think, anyone wants to say? Okay, perfect. I think we want to make sure we don't go on too long. I want to, again, quick hand for the panelists here today. Thank you very much. And also, please make your way towards, there's some dinner provided, so please, everybody's been very patiently waiting today. And again, thank you to the audience for coming in as well and being so patient with us. Thank you to, of course, Indic Academy for organizing this fantastic event. Thank you to Indic Academy for allowing me to be a part of it. So a personal thank you from, of course, me as well. And again, guys, please make your way towards the dinner, and we'll have a little meet and greet there too. Thank you.
Yeah, and please provide your feedback.